I have spent weeks comparing the brand new Galaxy Tab S11 Ultra to the Tab S9 Ultra and 10 Ultra in 11 different categories, and the results were far from what I was expecting. Regardless, I guarantee that by the end of this video, you'll know for sure if the Tab S11 Ultra is worth your hard-earned cash. When it comes to physical differences, while they are the same width and length, there are a few really important changes. The most obvious change is the S Pen docking location. So on the Tab S9 and S10 Ultra, you had this docking location right here on the back, and there was a strip that showed you exactly where you could put the S Pen. And as you can see, you can put it in either orientation. On the Tab S11 Ultra, there is no strip on the back at all, and you can only mount it in this top corner right here, but it can be mounted in both orientations. And here's a quick side note, on the Tab S9 and S10 Ultra, the S Pen can mount to the top just like it can on the Tab S11 Ultra, and this does obviously work in both orientations as well. I did also notice that if I take the S Pen and put it in this little area right here, it can kind of stick to that, so you can sort of use that as a place to store your S Pen if you really want to. But that's not the purpose of these little terminals here. This is actually for accessories. So previously on the Tab S9 and S10 Ultra, if I tip this up, you can see that there's pogos on the bottom for connecting to things like a keyboard. On the Tab S11, those pogos have been moved to the back. And if we look at the side right there, you can see that there's no more pogos on the bottom. And this means you can't use any of your previous accessories on the Tab S11 Ultra. Taking a look back at the S Pen, we can see there's actually a really big difference in the S Pen style now as well. The new S Pen now has a hexagon shape, which Samsung says is going to be more comfortable to use. And when I first started using the new S Pen, I really didn't have a preference between the old and the new. But when I went back to using the old S Pen, I realized that I always put my thumb on this flat part, and that would put the button on the opposite side. So anytime I wanted to use the eraser, I had to be a lot more intentional about pushing that button. But with the new S Pen, since every side is flat, I could just put the button right next to my thumb, and it was actually a lot easier to hit the button consistently. So overall, I do think this new hexagon style is an improvement. Another big difference is the angle of the tip. So they still have the same pressure sensitivity, but because there's a more conical shape on the new S Pen, you can hold it at a much steeper angle, which would be great for something like shading. Something you might have noticed as I've been turning these S Pens around in my hand is that the new S Pen has a darker gray side while the rest of it is white. That darker gray side just tells you which side the magnets are on. So if I try to connect a white side of the pen to the tablet, it wouldn't actually stick at all. It does have to be that gray side. But it's not all good news with the new S Pen because Samsung has removed the Bluetooth functionality from the pen. And as someone who frequently uses the Bluetooth functionality on the previous generation of the S Pens, I was really upset when I heard that they were taking away the Bluetooth functionality. So much so that I almost didn't even buy the Tab S11 Ultra. But then I learned about some specific new S Pen features, and that actually changed my opinion on it. And that's a bit of a longer discussion, so we'll get back to that a little bit later in the video, but for now, I just want to focus on the physical differences between the devices. Taking a look at the side of the devices, we see another big change here. Samsung has actually swapped the position of the power button and the volume rockers. And this is significant because it changes how you take a screenshot and how you get to the power off menu. So on the Tab S9 and S10 Ultra, if you wanted to take a screenshot, you'd have to press the power button, skip a button, then press the volume down button. And then when you do that, you'd get your screenshot. On the Tab S11 Ultra, since the buttons are right next to each other, it's a lot easier to take a screenshot or get into that power off menu by holding the buttons instead. This isn't something you'll be using all the time, but it is a nice improvement. Looking at the bottom of the devices, we can see that Samsung switched from ports on the bottom for the speakers to slits. And this is true for all four speakers. Taking a look back at the top of the devices, we can see that the micro SD card slot has stayed in the same position, but it has gotten an upgrade. So on the Tab S9 Ultra, it supported up to a 1TB micro SD card, then a 1.5TB micro SD card on the Tab S10 Ultra. Now it's up to a 2TB micro SD card. And to open these up, just use the included SIM ejector tool and push it into the hole. That'll eject the tray. You can take that out. You can then put in your micro SD card and reinsert it. A really odd hardware change is found in the quick panel, and if I tap the sound icon on the old devices, I can switch to vibrate mode, no sound at all, or re-enable sound. But on the Tab S11 Ultra, I can have the sound on or off, but there's no vibration motor on the Tab S11 Ultra. And I'm honestly really curious what you guys think about this because personally, I only use the vibration motor for notifications because I don't like having the sound on all the time. And the vibration was just enough to let me know that there's a new notification on the tablet without being interruptive. So for me, it just means I'm going to have to enable sound on my Tab S11 Ultra and just set the notification sound really low. But I want to know what you guys think about this. Like, are there other use cases for the vibration mode that I'm not thinking about, which would be really useful on a tablet? If so, let me know in the comments below. I'd say the most obnoxious change with the Tab S11 Ultra is an entire rearranging of the magnets on the back. So this is a cover from the Tab S8 Ultra, and it fits perfectly fine on my Tab S9 Ultra, and my Tab S10 Ultra snaps on perfectly fine. If I try to put this on the Tab S11 Ultra, it doesn't. The magnets are shifted, so you can't get this to stay on at all. And I don't know why Samsung moved the magnets on this. Now, I understand Samsung moved the accessory pins to the back of the device, which may have interfered with one of the magnets, but to rearrange all the magnets seems really unnecessary and completely prevents you from using your old accessories. When it comes to the weight of the devices, there's actually not too much of a difference. So this is the Tab S9 Ultra, comes in at about 1 pound, 10 ounces. And if I put the S Pen on top of it, it brings up 0.3 ounces. If we switch over to the Tab S10 Ultra, we get 1 pound, 9.6 ounces. And toss the S Pen on it, and it's barely less than the Tab S9 Ultra. Now we're going to put on the Tab S11 Ultra, and it's a little bit less weight. Going to toss the S Pen on, and it makes a little bit of a difference there too. But again, these are so comparable in weight that you're really not going to notice a difference. That said, objectively speaking, they're all super lightweight considering the size of the devices. Like, they're surprisingly lightweight, but not quite light enough to hold it in your hand for an extended period of time and not get fatigued. When it comes to durability, all three of these have IP68 dust and water resistance, and that includes the S Pens. So if you're someone who likes to use your tablet next to a pool, you really don't need to worry about it with any of these tablets. When it comes to the screen durability specifically, Samsung doesn't actually mention what they use for their screens, at least not that I could find. I'm going to guess it's some sort of Gorilla Glass. But the important thing to know is that I've been using my Tab S10 Ultra pretty much every week for about a year now, and I don't have a single scratch anywhere on this device. But to be fair, I do try to take really good care of my devices. I am very careful with them when I use them to make sure I don't scratch them, so take that with a grain of salt. Regardless, based on my experience with screen durability on the Tab S9 Ultra and the 10 Ultra, I'm not concerned about it on the Tab S11 Ultra, even if Samsung made no changes to the glass quality. When it comes to battery size, the Tab S11 Ultra gets an 11,600 mAh battery, which is 400 mAh more than the two previous generations. And I'm going to be doing some extensive battery drain and charge tests to see how much of a difference that actually makes. So definitely stick around for that. When it comes to screen quality, there's a few things we need to take a look at. And the first thing is reflectivity. So if I turn these screens off, the Tab S9 Ultra didn't have any sort of anti-reflective coating. So as I turn it around, you see a ton of reflection of everything in the room. But on the Tab S10 Ultra, this is the first model that had the anti-reflective coating, and you can really see a huge difference in how many reflections there are. The Tab S11 Ultra also has that coating and has a similar reflectiveness to the Tab S10 Ultra. And if I tilt both the Tab S9 and 10 Ultra up towards the camera, you can see the camera very clearly in the Tab S9 Ultra, and you can barely see it in the Tab S10 Ultra. So this coating really does an excellent job. Taking a look at outdoor visibility on the Tab S9 Ultra on the left and the Tab S10 Ultra on the right, we can see a huge difference in that screen reflectivity again, but the brightness is about the same on both devices since they both have a peak brightness of 930 nits. In person, the Tab S10 Ultra is definitely easier to see because of that anti-reflective display. However, when we compare the Tab S10 Ultra on the left to the Tab S11 Ultra on the right, we see a huge difference in brightness. And that's because the Tab S11 Ultra has a 1600 nit peak brightness. That is a dramatic increase over the Tab S9 and 10 Ultra, and the camera does not do it justice. In person, this is a really significant difference. So if you use the Tab S9 or 10 Ultra outside frequently, and it's often difficult to see the tablets in those bright environments, then the Tab S11 Ultra will be a very noticeable upgrade. When we compare the high dynamic range video playback quality of all three devices set to their max possible brightness, we can see a lot of glare on the Tab S9 Ultra. Switching to the Tab S10 Ultra almost completely removes the glare, but this does give the illusion that the Tab S9 Ultra is brighter than the Tab S10 Ultra. when in reality, it's actually just a reflection of the white ceiling. The Tab S11 Ultra keeps the anti-reflective properties of the Tab S10 Ultra and significantly increases the brightness. So if you frequently watch high dynamic range content on your tablet, the Tab S11 Ultra will give you a noticeable upgrade regardless of whether you're coming from a Tab S9 Ultra or 10 Ultra. Something really odd that I noticed with the Tab S11 Ultra is that if you look at it from an angle, like when it's laying down on a desk and you're kind of sitting away from it, there's like a pinkish tint to it. And at first I thought there was a problem with the screen, but when you look directly at it, the pink tint's gone and the colors look perfect. And for reference, here's what the Tab S10 Ultra looks like at an angle. You can see that it's not nearly as pink. And just to be thorough, here is the Tab S9 Ultra at an angle. Again, not nearly as pink as the Tab S11 Ultra. So it seems that Samsung changed something with how they make their screens, whether how they do their anti-reflective coating, or maybe something with the screen itself that gives it this kind of pink tint when you have it at a steep angle. But I think it's important to point out that it's only at a steep angle that you see that, and the vast majority of people are always going to be staring directly at the tablet, either by holding it in their hands or having it propped up with a stand. So while this probably won't be an issue for day-to-day use, I thought it was worth pointing out. To test the performance of the devices, let's start with a 3D Mark benchmark using Solar Bay Extreme with the tablets charged up to 100%. Then, after all the performance testing, we'll see how much battery life we lost on each device. So after the test, we see a modest boost in performance from the Tab S9 Ultra to the Tab S10 Ultra, and a significant boost in performance with the Tab S11 Ultra. Now let's move on to the regular Solar Bay test. After the Solar Bay test, we get similar results with the Tab S10 Ultra getting a modest improvement over the Tab S9 Ultra, but a huge improvement with the Tab S11 Ultra versus the other two devices. So if you do a lot of gaming on the previous generation Samsung tablets and you don't quite get the frame rate you want at the resolution and quality you want on those previous devices, the Tab S11 Ultra will give you some notable improvements. And taking a quick look at the battery percentages here, you can see that they're all still at 99%, so it's pretty comparable so far. Next, we'll run a Geekbench 6 CPU and GPU benchmark. The CPU benchmark shows significant improvements with the Tab S11 Ultra again. If we look back at the Tab S9 and 10 Ultra, we only had a 100-point increase in single-core performance, but with the Tab S11 Ultra, we get about a 500-point improvement. And the multi-core score does jump up significantly between the generations. The GPU score is where we see the biggest improvements generation over generation. And when we look at the battery percentages now, we can see that the larger battery in the Tab S11 Ultra is starting to show itself. Now we're going to test the battery drain from downloading, then watching the same movie at the same brightness with the same volume settings on all three tablets. After the movie, it's pretty clear that the larger battery on the Tab S11 Ultra is going to make a significant difference in overall battery life, especially for things like media consumption. Like, this is a huge difference in battery life right now. And if we take a look at the battery drain in the settings, you can see clearly that Disney Plus only used 10% of the battery on the Tab S11 Ultra when it used nearly double on the two previous generation tablets. Now let's test the video export speeds on these tablets, since all of these are more than capable of some pretty extensive video editing. For this test, I'm using the LumaFusion app, and I'm exporting the exact same 4K video in H.264 format with the same effect applied on all three tablets. And the Tab S11 Ultra finishes first by a significant margin, with the Tab S10 and 9 Ultras finishing pretty close to each other. So if you do a lot of video editing with your tablet, the S11 Ultra will be a huge upgrade. Now it's time to test the thermal performance of the tablets by running the Solar Bay Extreme test over and over for 20 minutes straight. So here's the results for the thermal test. All the tablets performed pretty well, with the Tab S10 Ultra having a slightly lower thermal performance compared to the other two devices. Regardless, I don't think you need to worry about any of these devices throttling performance based on temperature. Since the Tab S9 Ultra has Wi-Fi 6E, while the Tab S10 and 11 Ultra have Wi-Fi 7, I wanted to do a Wi-Fi speed test. And to do that, I transferred a 5GB file over a 10 gigabit per second network. And here are the peak transfer speeds of each device. So while the Tab S9 Ultra was pretty quick, its average transfer speed was closer to 200 megabytes per second. Meanwhile, the Tab S10 and 11 Ultra stayed around 300 or over 300 megabytes per second for most of the transfer. And to really drive the point home with how fast this is, You'd have to have an internet speed of at least 2.5 gigabits per second in order to reach these speeds. So if your internet service is less than 2 gigabits per second, it actually won't really make a difference which tablet you're using. But if you're doing a lot of local transfers, like maybe you have a Plex server, you may notice a bit of a difference with the Tab S10 and 11 Ultra. Taking a look at a mostly full battery drain between both the Tab S10 Ultra and 11 Ultra, you can see that the larger battery plus more efficient processor does make a huge difference in battery life. Right now I've got over 8 hours of screen on time on the Tab S11 Ultra and like 4 days of standby time, and it still has 15% left. The Tab S10 Ultra made it to about 7 hours and 40 minutes of battery life, with about a day and a half of standby time, and that brought it all the way down to 5%. So I do think that no matter what you're doing on your tablet, you are going to see a significant increase to battery life with the Tab S11 Ultra. For the charge speed test, I let every device run down to 5%. Then I plugged them into 45-watt chargers, which is the fastest charge speed for all of these tablets. And the first tablet I did this with was the Tab S10 Ultra, and I used Samsung's official 45-watt charger. But as you're going to see in a minute, this clearly is not the best fast charger to use because I charged both of these devices with Anker's fast charger and got significantly faster charging. So if you wanted a faster charger, don't buy Samsung's, buy Anker's. That's not sponsored, it's just the results I got from the test. And I'll have a link to this specific charger in the description and pinned comment if you're interested. So now let's take a look at the results. After just 30 minutes, both the Tab S9 and 11 Ultra had very comparable charge speeds. But the Tab S10 Ultra, which was using Samsung's charger, only had about 18% charged after 30 minutes. At about an hour, which I did miss that mark on the Tab S11 Ultra, so it wouldn't be quite this charge. It would actually be closer to the low to mid 80s, which would match the Tab S9 Ultra charge speed. And again here, you can see that the Tab S10 Ultra using Samsung's charger is only at 31%, so clearly Samsung's charger is just not cutting it. Although it is just possible that I have a defective charger, regardless, I'd still get the Anker charger. And at an hour and 27 minutes, the Tab S11 Ultra already finished charging to 100%. The Tab S9 Ultra needed a little bit longer, about an hour and 42 minutes to get to 100%. And Samsung's 45-watt charger on the Tab S10 Ultra took 2 hours and 41 minutes to get to 100%. But I think the biggest takeaway here is that the Tab S11 Ultra has a larger battery than both of these devices and still managed to charge faster using the exact same charger than the Tab S9 Ultra. And I'm guessing that comes down to thermal performance, where Samsung's able to keep the battery cooler on the Tab S11 Ultra while it's charging, allowing it to charge faster. And I also want to make it clear that if I used the Anker charger with the Tab S10 Ultra, it would be a very similar charge speed to the Tab S9 Ultra since both of these have the exact same battery size. When it comes to the cameras, all three of these devices have a 13 megapixel standard angle camera and an 8 megapixel wide angle camera. But just because they're the same specs doesn't mean the quality's the same, and I'll show you guys that in a minute. Taking a look at the front-facing cameras, it's a bit of a different story. So on the Tab S9 and 10 Ultra, we get two 12 megapixel cameras. One of them is an ultra-wide camera and one is a standard angle camera. But on the Tab S11 Ultra, we lose one of those cameras and just keep the ultra-wide camera. And while we're talking about the cameras, let's go ahead and take a look at some samples, starting with the rear cameras. Starting with the wide-angle camera quality, the Tab S9 Ultra is far too saturated and over-brightened, making the grass look like a much lighter color green than it does in real life. On the Tab S10 Ultra, the grass looks much more realistic, but there's a slight pink tint on the photo. The Tab S11 Ultra gives us the most true-to-life colors and brightness, while also fixing a lot of the warping around the edges of the photo that was very prevalent on the Tab S9 and 10 Ultra. Switching to the standard angle camera, the Tab S9 Ultra continues to be a bit oversaturated, but not as bad as its wide angle camera. The Tab S10 Ultra loses some saturation, but is technically the most color accurate. The Tab S11 Ultra adds back too much saturation, but keeps more detail than the Tab S9 Ultra. Overall, the Tab S11 Ultra is the most visually appealing photo here, but the Tab S10 Ultra is technically the most color accurate. Bottom line, these cameras are perfectly fine for work-related photos, like if you're a contractor, but your smartphone will definitely be better for any family photos or photos that you want to post to social media. Now let's test the front-facing cameras for video calls. Here's a video test with the front-facing camera on the Tab S9 Ultra. This is the ultra-wide camera, so obviously it catches a lot more of the scene. If I switch to the zoom camera, you're going to see that it's really just cropped in right on my face instead. And this is what the video is going to look like and the audio is going to sound like for things like video calls. Now we're going to test the face tracking capabilities on the Tab S9 Ultra. So if I move on over, you'll see that the camera is going to track me. And I'll show you guys how to enable this mode in a minute. And if I lean back, you'll see it kind of zooms in. And if I lean forward, it'll kind of zoom back out and make sure I stay in the frame. Now we're on the Tab S10 Ultra. So here's what that video looks like and what the audio sounds like. I can also zoom in on this one. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And here's that zoomed in shot. Again, I don't have the tracking on, so if I move side to side, it's not actually going to track me. But let me go ahead and turn that on, and we'll test that feature. All right, so face tracking is on. So if I move my face to the side, it should start tracking, but it is honestly a little bit slower than the Tab S9 Ultra, which is kind of surprising. The Tab S9 Ultra does seem to be handling this a little bit better. As I'm moving around a bit more, it does seem to be catching. Well, now it's not. So totally lost me. So this is one of our first really interesting finds here, is that the tracking on the Tab S10 Ultra is not as good as the previous generation. I'm really curious to see how this is going to work out with the Tab S11 Ultra. So let's go ahead and test out that device now. And here we are on the Tab S11 Ultra. Now, this one only has one front-facing camera, and it's this ultra-wide camera here, so you can get more in the shot, but you don't actually get a second zoom camera. And I can't even physically zoom either by pinching on the screen. I just get a message that says you can't do that. So if you do want to zoom in, you are going to have to use that face tracking option. So let's go ahead and enable that. And I'm actually going to turn on screen recording now so I can show you guys how I actually enable this face tracking mode. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this video. Then on the other side, I'm going to tap this menu right here. And I'm going to tap this little icon. And now it's going to enable auto framing. And now if I start recording again, you'll see that as I move around, there's this little box that follows me. And it should be zooming in and out on me. Yeah, there you go. So that's tracking very well. This is actually tracking much better than the Tab S10 Ultra. So it's interesting that we got decent tracking on the 9 Ultra, it got worse on the 10 Ultra, and now it's better again on the 11 Ultra. So if you have a Tab S10 Ultra, and this is a feature you use often, you're probably going to see some improvements by going with the Tab S11 Ultra. Now let's do a speaker test between these devices. I have the volume set to max on all of the devices, and Dolby Atmos is on and set to music. Surprisingly, the Tab S9 and 11 Ultra were both louder and had more punchy bass than the Tab S10 Ultra. And while the Tab S9 and 11 Ultra are tremendously close in sound quality, the Tab S11 Ultra was slightly more full sounding. But regardless, all three of these tablets have excellent sound, and the sound volume and quality really isn't a reason to upgrade from one to the other. Now let's take a minute to talk about the biggest controversy with the Tab S11 Ultra, and that has to do with the S Pen, because Samsung has now removed the Bluetooth functionality. And as someone who frequently uses the S Pen and has produced multiple videos showing dozens of incredible S Pen related features, especially the Bluetooth related ones, I was so upset about this when I found out about it that I almost didn't even buy the Tab S11 Ultra until I found out about a few things that I want to share with you guys here. But to start this off, I want to show you guys what you're actually going to be missing. So if I jump into the Air Actions menu, these are the actions that are related to Bluetooth functionality, and this is on the Tab S10 Ultra. You'll see that I get these shortcuts that I can do with the S Pen button. So if I wanted to open up the camera app, all I have to do is press and hold the S Pen button, and it'll open up the camera app. If I wanted to go home, I'd hold the S Pen button and draw an upside down V, and that takes me to the home screen. If I want to open up my recent applications, I would draw a right pointing caret shape, and it brings up my recent applications. And these are all customizable as well. So if I tap one of these, I can have it immediately activate any of these specific features or open up any application that I have installed on my tablet. And if I back out of here and look a little bit further down, you see that there's also app actions. So if I tap the camera app, for example, you'll see that I can do things like switch cameras, switch modes, and increase or decrease the zoom level just by using gestures with the pen. And I want to be clear here, the pen doesn't need to be anywhere near the tablet in order to use these gestures. But it's also important to point out that not every application has these special features. It's only the apps that showed up in this App Actions section. And some of them are honestly pretty useless, like the Samsung Internet ones, for example, gestures to scroll up or down or go backwards. Like, if you're going to be this close to your tablet that you're going to be using the internet browser on it, you don't need to keep the pen far from the screen in order to do those things. But when it comes to things like Samsung Notes, you can do things like switch back and forth between your favorite pens, and this is the feature I used all the time. Fortunately, Samsung does have an incredible fix for this, and we'll get to that in a minute. The last thing I want to show you on this page for things that you're going to be losing by not having the Bluetooth functionality is further down here in the General App Actions section. And this bottom one called Media is something I am going to miss having. So since this is such a big tablet, it is likely that you're going to watch movies on this at some point. And when you're watching those movies, you may have the tablet propped up on something and you're not right next to it. You might not be able to just kind of lean forward and touch the tablet. Well, this media controls section would let you control the tablet right from the S Pen. You can quickly pause the movie or increase or decrease the volume. And this does also work for music. So if you had your tablet connected to a Bluetooth speaker and maybe you got a bunch of friends over and the tablet's inside, but you got your speaker outside on a hot day, you wouldn't need to go back to your tablet to change the music. You could just take your S Pen out with you, keep it in your pocket, and whenever you want to change the song, you can just use the gestures on the pen to do it. So that's all the bad news with the S Pen, but I do want to share some good news with this new S Pen on the Tab S11 Ultra. And I want to start in the Samsung Notes application. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into that. And I had mentioned previously that I could switch between favorite pens by just pressing the S Pen button. And you'd see right here, it swapped to a different pen. I'd press it again, and it swapped to my other favorite pen. And I could keep going through to all of my favorite pens. And I could even double click the button to go backwards in my favorite pens. And as someone who uses Samsung Notes to edit PDFs pretty frequently, especially my digital guides, this is a feature that I got a lot of use out of. Fortunately, on the Tab S11 Ultra, there's a brand new way to do this. All you have to do is bring your pen close to the screen, then press and release the S Pen button, and it'll bring up this little menu here. I can then tap the pen and select another one of my favorite pens. If I press and release again and tap these options down here, I could also change which specific pen I'm using, change the pen color, and even the pen thickness right from this little submenu. And these quick controls were just not available on the previous generations of Samsung's tablets. If I wanted to make all those changes, I'd have to do it with this top menu up here. And the last option here is quick access to Note Assist. And these are the AI features that allow you to do things like auto format the notes, summarize the notes, translate them into a different language, use AI to convert your drawing into a much better looking drawing or a different style of drawing, and even transcribe any audio that you recorded in the note. And this toolbar exists in some other apps as well. This is not just limited to Samsung Notes. If you're an artist, this next S Pen improvement is going to be huge. So since Samsung completely redesigned the style of this S Pen, you can actually get a much steeper angle on the pen. And as you can see here, the difference in angle is dramatic. The new S Pen can basically almost lay flat on the tablet and still be used. The older S Pen loses tracking at a much higher angle. So while I'm definitely still upset that the Bluetooth functionality was removed from the S Pen on the Tab S11 Ultra, I wouldn't say that's enough of a reason to skip getting the Tab S11 Ultra. For software updates, yes, technically there are some new features on the Tab S11 Ultra, and I'm going to show you guys those features now, but I want you guys to remember that for Samsung devices, typically the previous few generations will get those new features in future updates, so this isn't going to be a reason to upgrade, but I do want to show you guys the features. So let's start by jumping into the settings. And if we go into the Galaxy AI settings, you're going to see that there are some new features available on the Tab S11 Ultra. And even the Tab S10 Ultra has some new features compared to the Tab S9 Ultra, but again, I do think the 9 Ultra is going to get some of these new features in a future update. The first new feature is Audio Eraser, and what this does is analyze the audio in any videos you have on your tablet, and it lets you isolate any different sounds in the tablet and either increase or decrease those levels. So if there's background noise, wind noise, maybe crowd noise, you can decrease those levels in the video and increase the levels for something like somebody's voice. And I've previously demonstrated how this works on the Galaxy S25 Ultra, so I'm going to play that clip for you now, just so you guys can see how well it works. If you're watching a video in your gallery app, if you just tap the video, you'll see this AI icon, and if you tap that icon, It'll analyze all the sounds in the video and let you grab individual sounds and drop the volume on those sounds. And this works incredibly well for things like wind noise, nature sounds, and pretty much anything else that it detects. Photo ambient wallpaper changes your lock screen wallpaper based on the time and weather. And if there's a subject in your photo, like a person or an animal, and it happens to be snowing, it'll actually have the snow fall on that subject. So it's a pretty cool feature, but this only affects your lock screen. Health Assist is a feature within the Samsung Health application that gives you recommendations for general health improvements, and it's based on all the data in your Samsung Health app. But this is actually available on pretty much any Samsung device that has Samsung Health on it, so I'm not sure why they have a dedicated section for it here on the Tab S10 and 11 Ultra, but not on the Tab S9 Ultra. Looking over at the Tab S11 Ultra, the only new feature we get here is the Now Brief. And this is something that I honestly don't really use too often. It's just a briefing that changes throughout the day to give you relevant information for that part of the day. So in the morning, it'll tell you things like the current weather, any upcoming appointments you have for the day, and you can even enable things like traffic updates as well. The next difference you'll notice is when you pull down your notification shade. You'll see that on the previous generation tablets, the whole background blurred out. But on the Tab S11 Ultra, it now just pops up in this little window and you can still see most of your screen. And I think this is a much better way to do notifications. There's no sense covering everything else just for a small notification. And the same is also true for your quick panel. If you pull that down, that's also going to be a smaller window that pops up instead of something that covers your entire screen. And if you've been paying close attention, you may have noticed this little line at the top of applications when I open them up on the Tab S11 Ultra, and that's not available on the Tab S9 and 10 Ultra. The purpose of this is to immediately open up Dex mode. So if I pull down on that and let go, it puts my window into a pop-up mode, and it enables Dex mode where this bottom panel gets a lot smaller. Now, if I open any other applications, they're going to immediately open up in these pop-up windows. And this will let me use the tablet more like a traditional laptop. If I wanted to enable Dex mode on the previous generations, I'd have to pull down my quick toggles and tap the Dex toggle. That would then put me into Dex mode. Then I can tap this little icon to have that window pop out. And when I open up new applications, they're going to open up in pop-up windows just like on the Tab S11 Ultra. But if I go to my recent applications on both of these, you'll see that the Tab S11 Ultra now has this desktop mode. And if I tap this little icon right here, I can open up a brand new desktop and open up different applications on that desktop. Now when I go to my recent applications, I can switch between desktops just like you can on something like a Windows computer. On the Tab S9 and 10 Ultra, you don't get any desktop options. And any applications I open up here are just going to open up in pop-up mode. And if I jump back into the recent applications again on the Tab S11 Ultra, and I swipe over away from the desktop mode and open up one of these applications, they're going to open up in full screen mode. And if I go back home, you see that this is not in Dex mode anymore. This bottom panel is a normal size. And if I want to quickly jump back into Dex mode, I can just tap the desktop and jump right back into that mode. On the previous generations of the tablets, if I wanted to get out of Dex mode, I just had to pull the quick toggle down and tap that Dex quick toggle. Now it takes me out of Dex mode, and I can just open applications like normal. And here's a quick bonus tip for you guys. If you have an application in this desktop mode and you want to move just one of those applications to the non-desktop mode, just tap this little down arrow right here. Then tap Remove from Desktop Workspace. That'll open it up in full screen mode. Now if I go back to my recent applications, you'll see that that application is now in the non-Dex mode and the regular desktop is still off to the side. And real quick, if you want to get a huge deal on the Tab S11 Ultra, Samsung is still having incredible trade-in deals and great bundle deals that you can get with my affiliate links that are on the screen, in the description, and in the pinned comment. And since those are affiliate links, I do get a small commission at no extra cost to you when you use them, and that's how I'm actually able to afford to purchase all the products I review on this channel. So I just wanted to say a huge thanks to all of you who've been using my links to make these videos possible. So, at the beginning of this video, I said that the results were far from what I was expecting, and that's because I thought for sure that the Tab S11 Ultra would have been the tablet to just skip entirely since it lost the Bluetooth S Pen functionality, and it's a seemingly small upgrade on paper. But after all this testing, I now think that there are some valid reasons to upgrade to the Tab S11 Ultra, and I'll lay those out now. If you currently own a Tab S9 or 10 Ultra and you frequently use it outside on bright days and you feel like you don't quite get enough battery life throughout your day, or you play some really graphically intensive games, edit videos on your tablet, or watch a lot of high dynamic range content, then yes, I think the Tab S11 Ultra would absolutely be worth the upgrade in those situations, especially with the current trade-in deals. But if you primarily use your tablet for productivity work, social media, web browsing, and maybe some light gaming, then no, the Tab S11 Ultra won't make much of a difference for you, and you're better off just saving your money. And you're also better off checking out this video next and subscribing so you don't miss more deep dive videos just like this. That's it for this Techisode. Jesus loves you guys, and I'll catch you in the next one.